When a sitting congresswoman looks the nation's top law enforcement official in the eye and says, "You're the least qualified director in history," the room doesn't just go silent, it holds its breath, because what she said next wasn't a soundbite, it was an indictment of power itself. A fiery exchange that peeled back the curtain on what happens when loyalty outweighs the law and justice itself begins to crack. This wasn't political theater. It was Jasmine Crockett's boiling point. You could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the frustration that had been building for years. She didn't come to flatter or to play nice. She came to say out loud what millions have been whispering: the system isn't protecting the people it swore to serve. She started with a gut punch. Members of Congress, her colleagues, had faced death threats. Some had their families stalked, their homes watched.
FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people, and even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody, and then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there, even though he literally confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for the apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're going to do anything about the white supremacy problem, the one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I mean, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's a pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country. And we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I think you're witnessing some auditions, clickbait auditions for the Academy Award for my Democratic colleagues. We'll see how they fare as they're on MSNBC later on today. But do you care, before I launch into my line of questioning, to respond to Ms. Crockett from Texas on that very elaborate and theatric display?
Here's what I've learned in my government service. I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission. We're succeeding in the mission because the men and women of the FBI have never been empowered to do more work and to hit the streets harder than by President Trump's authorities and resources he's given us. And so all I care about is that we are capturing more child predators than ever before, taking more drugs off the streets than ever before, that we are capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate, and we're delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history. That are facts that you cannot dispute. But you can come at me all you want. I don't care.
Thank you, Director, for that, and we appreciate your service. We appreciate the results speak for themselves, I think, pretty plainly, and your commitment not only to results, but to transparency, so we do appreciate that.
One lawmaker's wife was so terrified she slept with a firearm beside her bed. Another received anonymous calls promising violence if they didn't fall in line. And through it all, the FBI under its current leadership had little to show. Crockett made it plain, how can Americans have confidence in an agency that can't even keep their elected representatives safe? Then she dropped the line that turned heads across the chamber. You are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the Bureau. And for the first time in that hearing, even Patel's defenders shifted uncomfortably, because she wasn't exaggerating. The truth is simple, every FBI director before him, Democrat or Republican, had come through the Bureau. They'd investigated cases, managed field offices, walked the line between law and politics. Patel, not once. He'd never served in the FBI a single day in his life. He came from political staff jobs, bouncing between committees, intelligence posts and defense roles, all orbiting the same source of power. He wasn't a lawman. He was a loyalist. Crockett's point cut through the noise. This wasn't about qualifications on paper, it was about a mindset. When you appoint someone whose only credential is allegiance, you don't get justice, you get obedience. And that's how institutions crumble from the inside out. But her fury wasn't just about Patel's resume, it was about what had been happening since he took the chair. Reports had already surfaced of career officials being purged, people with decades of nonpartisan service quietly reassigned or forced out. She accused him of redirecting FBI resources, turning agents into makeshift border enforcers instead of investigators, stripping the Bureau's mission down to political theater. And as Crockett spoke, you could see the weight of that accusation land. Because when law enforcement becomes a prop for power, nobody is safe, not even the people cheering it on. She didn't stop there. Crockett turned to the bigger picture, the growing threat at home. The vast majority of these threats, she said, are coming from right-wing extremism. It wasn't conjecture, it was data, decades of it. Yet the Bureau's leadership had gone quiet on it. Domestic terror attacks against minorities, journalists and even lawmakers, downplayed, ignored or brushed aside as isolated incidents. And that silence, Crockett warned, isn't neutrality, it's complicity. In that moment, the hearing stopped being about political posturing. It became about who this country really protects. She pointed to the numbers, how violence rooted in hate keeps rising, how families live in fear while extremists walk free. And she said what too many in power refuse to: the danger isn't hidden overseas. It's right here, festering inside America's borders. Her words hit hard because they weren't just statistics, they were lived experiences. Black communities, immigrant neighborhoods, religious congregations, all knowing that when the threat comes, help might not. Because when leadership refuses to acknowledge the source of danger, justice can't find its target. Then came Patel's moment to respond. Instead of humility or accountability, he leaned into arrogance. "I don't give a damn what they say about me," he snapped. "We're succeeding in the mission." But the question hanging in the air was simple: succeeding at what? Patel rattled off numbers, arrests, seizures, clearance rates, as if statistics could erase the growing fear outside Washington. He spoke like a man who believed power meant invincibility, as if public service were a competition, not a responsibility. To Crockett, it was confirmation of everything she'd just said. The FBI wasn't failing by accident, it was failing by design. Her confrontation revealed something bigger than Patel's ego. It revealed how easily the lines between justice and politics can blur when institutions are led by those who see oversight as an inconvenience. Crockett's challenge wasn't about partisanship, it was about principle. Can a democracy survive when its watchdogs start taking orders from the very people they're meant to hold accountable? When those at the top stop fearing failure and start fearing their bosses instead? Her speech didn't just question Patel's leadership, it questioned the future of federal law enforcement itself, and the deeper you look, the more alarming it gets. Qualified officials sidelined, critical investigations delayed, resources quietly rerouted toward political priorities. The culture inside the Bureau shifting from independence to obedience. Crockett's words painted a chilling picture of an agency adrift, serving a narrative instead of a nation. What made her stand out wasn't just her anger, it was her clarity. "I don't feel safe," she said plainly. "And neither do millions of Americans." That honesty echoed beyond the hearing room. Because at some level everyone watching knew she was right. When justice becomes selective, safety becomes conditional. When truth bends to protect power, trust collapses. Crockett wasn't just calling out one man, she was sounding an alarm. The danger isn't just the people breaking the law, it's the people in power who look the other way when it happens. The most haunting part of her exchange came when she spoke about silence. The silence after hate crimes. The silence after threats. The silence after communities beg for protection that never comes. And that silence, she said, speaks louder than any press conference. She reminded everyone that leadership isn't about pride, it's about accountability. Real leadership doesn't say, "I don't care what they think." Real leadership listens, learns, and protects. But Patel's posture said otherwise. To him, criticism was noise, oversight was theater, and that indifference told the country everything it needed to know. Crockett's confrontation wasn't just a viral moment, it was a mirror showing how far the system has drifted from the ideals it claims to defend. Because at the heart of her outrage was a question every citizen should be asking: who is the FBI really protecting now? Under strong independent leadership, law enforcement protects everyone, regardless of race, belief, or politics. Under weak politicized leadership, it protects only those in power. Crockett refused to let that slide. Her challenge wasn't just about Patel's qualifications, it was about whether Americans can still trust the system built to defend them. Whether the pursuit of justice has turned into the preservation of control. And when she finished speaking, the silence that followed wasn't relief, it was realization. Realization that she'd said what many inside that room were too afraid to admit. Because this isn't just a fight between a congresswoman and a director, it's a fight over the soul of American justice. A fight over whether truth still matters when it's inconvenient. Her words left a mark because they were raw, unfiltered, and real. "I don't have confidence in you," she said. And the country shouldn't either. It wasn't spite, it was a warning. A wake-up call to anyone still pretending that everything's fine. And the more Patel tried to project strength, the weaker he looked. Because real strength doesn't need to shout. Real strength doesn't hide behind numbers or dismiss oversight. Real strength faces criticism head-on and earns respect through integrity. Crockett's voice, sharp and unwavering, represented something bigger than party lines. It represented accountability. She didn't just expose Patel's failures, she reminded America what it means to expect better. Every word she spoke carried the weight of frustration millions feel watching institutions bend under pressure, watching power replace principle, watching justice become selective, and that's why this moment mattered. Because when someone finally dares to say the quiet part out loud, it cuts through all the noise. In the end, Crockett's message wasn't just about Patel's leadership, it was about what kind of nation America wants to be, a country where accountability is optional, or one where truth still has a voice, even when it's uncomfortable. Her confrontation will be remembered not for its theatrics, but for its courage. The courage to call out the rot inside the system, to demand that those in power remember who they serve, and to remind everyone listening that silence is not neutrality, it's surrender. So what happens next depends on all of us. If Americans stay quiet, the system stays broken. But if people keep shining light on what's hidden, if they keep amplifying voices like Crockett's, then there's still hope. Because the one thing power fears most isn't exposure, it's accountability, and that's why this moment matters. If you believe that leadership should mean integrity, that justice should protect everyone, not just the powerful, then don't let this moment fade. Share this video, leave your thoughts below, and make sure to subscribe. Because the truth only matters if people keep watching, keep questioning, and refuse to look away.